Hey guys, how's it going? I have the first chapter of my book here and I'm going to read it to you. There may be things in here that are hard to hear throughout my book, and that's okay. Thank you for listening. I just appreciate anyone who's listening. Blind Visions from Heaven, written by Angela Rhodes Parker, based on a true story. The devil slips in, unbeknownst to those even closest to a person. They can live for years pretending to be God-fearing. They might attend church religiously just for the appearance to their peers. They may live in a nice house and drive nice cars. That does not mean that in one instant, when they think that you are onto them and have seen the devil lurking in their eyes, he will not come out and try to harm you. You see, those with the devil in them certainly do not like God's truth spoken. When you fight the devil, you are in for the fight of your life. My story takes place in Tri-Cities, Washington. This is a cute, fast-growing agricultural area. The impressive Columbia River splits apart the three cities, and you must either cross a bridge or ride by boat to get to the neighboring cities. Bike paths line the beaches of the rivers, as do houses owned by the wealthier folk in town. As a child, I used to wander through the parks by the river, admiring the Columbia's natural beauty. Birds would chirp around me, squirrels darted across my path, and the sound of children playing filled the air. I would admire the houses that lined it, imagining myself one day living in one of those homes. How wonderful would it be to just step out your back door and have this huge park in your backyard? I had always felt safe strolling by the river. The parks were always filled with people on a warm spring or summer day. What I did not realize as a child gazing at these mansions was that while a house may look perfect on the outside, on the inside, it may be a house full of demons. Skeletons could be swept into the closets of even the nicest of homes. I had no idea that the innocence of my youth would one day be gone. These skeletons and scary people would one day cross my path and forever change the way that I viewed life. They are the Good Old Boys, a group of wealthy men who live scattered amongst the doctors, lawyers, and other high-paying professions here in town. While their education levels do not coincide with their assets, most do not notice. They appear very nice. You might spot one walking into the home next to yours. His lifted pickup truck is shiny and well taken care of. Dirt bikes, wave runners, and other fun toys meant to enjoy the warm weather typical of Tri-Cities summers are eye-catching, but you still blink it away. Tri-Cities had long been a hot spot for real estate, as it has been a fast-growing town for years. You assume he invested well and go on with your day. And then there's his wife. She looks like a trophy that should be held on his arm, yet he walks ahead of her. This man is never by her side holding her hand. He never walks behind her, letting her lead the way. He walks ahead of her, claiming his dominance. He most certainly never holds the door for her. He will greet you first, and she will stay meekly quiet. She is always smiling. Her dirt kickers are expensive looking and without a scratch on them, as they are saved for special nights out and church. Her outfits are modest but easy on the eyes. It does make you wonder why she is wearing a full-sleeved cardigan on a hot summer day, but you push this thought to the side as well. She doesn't like to show her skin much, you decide. He leaves his house often and has lots of people swinging by. Well, he was the popular guy from high school. He has boasted through the gates that separate your homes many a time about trophies, record set, and even some contracts signed. The stories about Friday Night Lights and high school romance do make a book nerd a tad jealous, which was the intention for the conversation. The tales he does not tell you are much crazier and the making of a movie set here in this little podunk town. For if you step inside of his home, it will tell a different story, much like his wife's summertime cardigan. The life he leads once he has left his home will yet again tell you a different tale. For those who were invited into their homes, yet somehow made it out, they have a story to tell. Writing is a passion for me, and I've written books ever since a pen was put into my hand. Years ago, the pen was ripped from my fingers and my mouth was forced shut. I could no longer write, as the story that unfolded surrounding me became a nightmare. Within recent years, I chose to pick back up my pen. While my dad was the bullying champion here in town, I chose to claim my throne as Queen Pen. Word spread around town that I was writing a book like wildflower amongst the dry landscape. Once this rumor landed upon the ears of certain people, there was panic. I suppose a person not so innocent just might get scared at the thought of another person writing a book. That is truly the saddest part of my story. My book was never even about that. The intentions I held with my writing were to write a story based on a loved one who had passed on and our continued connection together. It was to be seen as a spiritual guide for those in grief. Whenever you speak of a heaven, the devil does have a tendency to throw out his flames. Those with a temper respond before they think, and the response was so horrendous that it had to be added in. I don't want one more woman to go through this. Enough is enough. Do you want to know what it feels like to be scared for your life? I'm not talking about being scared once. Like you had to slam on the brakes for your car as to avoid a crash on the highway. A ladder had fallen from the truck in front of you and was flying towards your windshield. The cowboy in you came out, and instinctively, as you held onto the wheels so tight that your knuckles turned white, you were preparing for the worst. At the last second, the ladder hit the front of your car, tumbling beneath the wheels of your vehicle, and you kept that death grip on the vehicle, running the ladder over at a high speed, trying to keep your car in the lines and not hit the morning traffic rushing by on each side of you. I'm not talking about being scared twice, like the time you came into the kitchen with a laundry basket in your hands to find your phone missing. When you asked your little daughter where it was, she said, "The man in the backyard took it." Suddenly, a man twice your size came bursting through the back door, breaking into your home. In a matter of seconds, you were pinned down to the ground and desperate to find a way out from this violent attack. And I'm not even talking about 3 times scared. Perhaps all of the previous 2 events had happened to you, aside from the fact that you were a single mom struggling to financially and physically take care of your children. You were over and over again thrown sticks down your path, as though the verbal, physical, and emotional abuse were not enough. You had to find yourself fighting for your life once again. This is my story. It was a chilly January day in the year 2019. This was the day that I would yet again meet face with the devil. Standing in my work locker, I threw my gray sweater on over my scrubs. The Tri-Cities wind could be bitter cold in the winter months, and I needed to take out the boxes that we had just broken down. I stepped outside and was immediately met with a chilly gust that made my steps quicken. As I walked across the work parking lot with a load of boxes in my hands, I thought back over the events of the past few years. I was happily settled down and married to my best friend. My youngest daughter's 13th birthday loomed in the near future, and we had many plans for the upcoming year. To top all of this off, I had just finished writing my first novel and had self-published it to Amazon. I was going to forget about the tragedies that my family had gone through and focus on the years yet to come. My mind began to wander as I lifted the recycle bin open and threw the boxes inside. What would the year of 2019 bring to my family? Would my book sell lots of copies? Or would it sit as an ebook, just taking up space on the internet? Pushing those thoughts aside, I started to turn around. Just as I did this, I heard my name called out. Kat! A male voice behind me yelled out my name, startling me. I swiveled around quickly, only to see an older man coming close to me. A white cloth was grasped in his right hand, and suddenly all that I could see was it coming closer to my nostrils. Quickly, I backed away from the man, who was attempting to get right into my face. He stared directly into my eyes, clearly trying to show his dominance over me. The man's blue eyes were menacing as he squared up with me. There was something about them that seemed so evil and yet so empty all at once. As I backed slowly away from this stranger, I continued to stare back at him, etching his face into my mind. I noted his thin lips, haggard skin, and scrawny frame. He did not appear to have lived a clean lifestyle. My feet stepped backwards slowly, inching myself towards the office building I had stupidly stepped out of a few moments earlier. I found it very odd that he was trying to cozy up with me, as he was at least 20 years older than me. This was not a man attempting to gain a dinner date. The stranger appeared startled by me staring him down and quickly threw away the cloth that he held. Apparently he had thought that I would go down without a fight. I just need to throw this away, the man said quickly, as I continued to put distance between us, making sure my eyes never left his face. Who was he, and how did he know my name? He acted as though we were coffee buddies, yet I had never seen him before in my life. Or perhaps he was checking to see if I did recognize him. He quite obviously knew who I was. The haggard-looking guy gestured towards a car that was parked right up in front of the building. I glanced towards his gesture only for a split second, not wanting to break my eye contact with him. Why don't you get in my car? I have a Chihuahua that you can pet. It's a beautiful dog. The car he was pointing at was white, and did indeed have a small dog perched in the back window. Strangely enough, one of the back doors had also been left wide open. My legs took quicker steps back towards the building until I had enough distance between us that I was confident to turn around and run inside. The sidewalk that surrounded the building was now under my feet, and I quickly pivoted with my heart pounding inside of me. Years of ice skating lessons made my turn quick, as I had practiced this movement on the slippery ice time and time again. This was a routine made of nightmares. As I bolted away from the wolf behind me, unsure if he would follow and chase, I ran into the warm, comforting office and slowed my pace down to a walk, passing by my unknowing coworkers in a daze. What had just happened? Who in the world was that man, and how on earth did he know my name? Immediately, I ran into my boss's office and explained to her what had just happened, feeling dumbfounded. My gut instincts told me that there was something up with this strange person. The way he got right next to me was most definitely not the act of a gentleman. I went over and over the event in my mind, trying to find some logical explanation, but the fact that he had yelled out my name kept playing through my brain. I looked down at my gray sweater, seeing that my name badge was most definitely covered by it. He could not have seen it written on my scrubs. He had to have known my name before I walked across the parking lot. He had to have been waiting for me. My heart did not want to admit it at that point in time. But I did have one clue as to the identity of the man by the dumpster. Years ago, while attempting to leave a relationship that had become extremely violent, I had received a threatening phone call. Much like today, the guy on the other end knew my name and sounded extremely threatening. His menacing voice warned me against telling the police anything about him. I explained to him that I knew nothing about him. Very confused as to why he was calling me of all people, I told him I knew nothing. This was no lie. Prior to his phone call, I had no information that I could have given the police regarding his behavior. However, thanks to his threatening phone call, I did now have a little bit of useful information. He had not bothered to block me from seeing his number, and the caller ID clearly showed me his first and last name. Knowing that this was a very dangerous man and situation, I burned that name into my mind, but did not let on to him that I knew his name. My gut feeling was that one day this piece of information would come in handy. I also had to shake my head in amazement about the brain capacity of criminals. The law system was so jaded and flawed that they did not have to think through their actions prior to performing them. It was my responsibility to provide proof that my life was being threatened. The man who threatened my life years ago got away scot-free, in more ways than one. This term refers to a tax set about in medieval times. Those who managed to avoid the tax had gotten away scot-free. As the past flooded through my mind, I became extremely frightened. All of the threats that I had received for so many years were now coming back to me. They were coming back at full force. Over and over again, my life had been threatened by a group of abusive criminals. You can't leave. We have money. We will send a friend out to kill you. We will put a tracking device on your car. We will poison your dog and break in through the doggy door. We have ties to the legal system. We will pay off the judges and lawyers. You'll never win. As the never-ending threats from the past flooded my brain, my heart began to race in fear. The type of fear that I had only known once before was once again setting in. As my heart thumped in fright, I knew exactly who was behind the man at the dumpster. What was the motive this time, though? The front cover of my book flashed through my head, and I knew that's what it was. How dare I write a book? How dare I tell the truth about what happened to me? The worst thing of all was how much I had sugarcoated the truth in my book. The first version wasn't even close. No version will ever be close to the truth, because I can't tell all of the truth. One tiny chapter listing myself as a domestic violence survivor, and it was off with my head. So much disgust filled my body. I knew the guy at the dumpster would not be the last of it. This was about a loss of control. Violent abusers cannot stand losing control and will stop at nothing to win. I mean, come on. They always win. They were the stars, weren't they? How dare I become the star character of my own book? This thought as well made me laugh, as I knew that was exactly what they were upset about. Not only had they lost control, but they were no longer the stars. Their glory days had ended. The most ironic fact of the matter was that I was not even the star of my own book. A child was the star. She wanted me to write her book, and her wish was my command. To be fair, I really wasn't the author either. Yes, physically, I wrote this book. However, it had been given to me by a writer. This story had been a gift given to me, and it was my duty to write it. For her. I had two tasks at hand with my writing. I was to type out the story given to me, and I was to make a little girl the star she always dreamed of being. This story had nothing to do with them. They sure did have to make it about them, though, didn't they? They earned their place in my book. My mind flashed back to days that I just wanted to forget. I knew no one else this violent. No one else had ever pinned me to the ground in a brutal attack. The weeks to come were very scary. I opened up a case with the police department, and a videotape was recovered from our office's security cameras. Oh boy, did that video ever give me a bigger picture of just how dangerous this guy was. My heart dropped to find out that the man had sat outside of our office building in that white car for 7 hours casing the joint. He never once went inside. He just sat in his car for hours watching my place of work. For weeks, I was walked outside, escorted by an armed coworker with military training. Friends drove me to work as I began to spot familiar cars following me everywhere around town. I would shake at the thought of even getting into my vehicle. What if they really had put a tracking device on my car, as I had once been threatened? I would think that I was okay to drive, and then a panic attack would tell me not to. One early morning, my husband dropped me off at a local Starbucks on my way to work. Wrapped up in a blanket and reading the book that my cousin Kendall had sent to me in the mail, I attempted to shake off the fright that I felt. A warm cup of coffee pressed up to my lips and people surrounding me helped to soothe my fears. As I attempted to calm down by reading a page of my book, a face appeared around the corner at me. I turned my head quickly to see a young man, possibly Hispanic, peering directly into my personal space. He stared me down, just inches from my face, as though to intimidate me. I stood up and stared him back down. We were inside of a Starbucks, and there were tons of people all around, so I knew he couldn't do anything. Yet my mind wondered, does he have a gun? Is he going to shoot me? He sank back away from me, as though he had done nothing creepy, and slowly sipped a coffee while leaning against the wall next to the register. He appeared a little startled that I was grabbing towards my phone to take a photo of him. I looked down to see a text message from Rosie. She was letting me know that she was here and right out front. I paused as the tall, skinny man seemed to be waiting for me to leave. Funny. Was he going to meet me in a parking lot? Not one part of me thought this an innocent young man. He finally slowly left, seeing that I was pulling my phone out to call the cops. Shaking, I got into Rosie's car that was parked just feet from the door. She looked me up and down, seeing my fright. I explained to her what had just happened, and I could see her surprise. Trying to calm me down, she joked around. Maybe he was just hitting on you. I laughed a bit, but I knew that a nice-looking, very young man would not be hitting on a nearly 40-year-old mother of two. While I never would see that creep again, I did wonder how much he'd been paid to do that. What amount was my life worth? I'm very curious to know. I'd like to know what the price was. I think it was set far too low. Slowly, my confidence came back. The man who met me in my work parking lot must have heard from the grapevine that the police were involved in the situation, as I did not see him in the parking lot again. My friends, family, and relatives were shocked. What in the world would bring someone to go to this length? Everyone who knows me would tell you that I'm a nice person. I'm always helping a friend move, taking care of my kids, or writing a book in the memory of a past loved one. I explained to them all that that was their answer right there. My book had been published. This had to be about them. How dare she talk about us? What right did she have to talk about our actions? What right do I have to talk about my abuse? I have every right in the world to write my story. I am a survivor of domestic violence, and no one will stop me from surviving. I will do everything that I can to survive, and I want the thieves who try to steal my happiness and my life to hear me out. This is not your story. This is my story to tell. So please, come along with me on this journey. I promise you will get a few surprises along the way, as this group of people had no idea what my book was truly about. Not one of them ever knew the real me. All right, that wraps up the first chapter. I'm hoping that I can get another chapter up pretty quickly. Thank you for listening. I'm gonna sit here and sip out of my Dickies cup and wish that we still had a Dickies here, but they didn't pay their taxes, did they? And thank you for all joining in. I'll see you next week.